everyone, welcome to another Fri-Yay. My name is Kelsey and I am the Teen Services Librarian here at Smith Public Library, and with me today is Whitney.
Hi.
Who you probably recognize from a couple of our other videos. She is a reference assistant here at the Smith Public Library and she does the Japanimation program with me. So if you're part of Japanimation, you probably see her on certain Thursdays every month and you'll be used to her. But she is going to be talking to us today about Dungeons and Dragons. If you don't know what Dungeons and Dragons is, we will explain that briefly as well. But if you have seen the Netflix original series Stranger Things, you are probably very familiar with Dungeons and Dragons, as it plays a huge role in the series. And we also did a really big Dungeons and Dragons program last summer, where we actually had some dungeon masters come in. And dungeon masters, that's a whole role. Whitney does that as well. She'll explain it. But we had some dungeon masters come in and put on whole D&D games for you guys. So we are excited to have a short little Fri-Yay about Dungeons and Dragons. So Whitney, take it away.
All right, it's my turn. So for the most part today, we're just gonna be talking about like what all you may need to play D&D and what you might not need, because a lot of the stuff you don't need. It's just kind of fluff and extra and fun.
Well, explain what it is first.
Oh, yes. So D&D, first of all, stands for Dungeons and Dragons. And Dungeons and Dragons is a type of tabletop role-playing game. So tabletop role-playing games, they're like board games. They happen on a tabletop. They can be in person or online. And you're basically role-playing in a certain setting as a different character. So D&D is a lot of fantasy, but there are other ones, like, for example, there's one called World of Darkness. That one's another tabletop role-playing game. It has its own set of rules, its own set of books, information, everything. But D&D is really popular, and it's
probably the
one.
most popular and well-known one, yeah. And it was, I think, created in the 80s, or was it even earlier than that? No, like 60s.
It's pretty old. I don't know when it was created.
Look it up. Look it up. We're telling you all the wrong things.
Yeah, it's okay. And you know, that brings up a good point. A big thing about D&D, a huge thing, is that you don't have to be right about everything. You don't have to follow the rules strictly to a T. The game is about what you make it. And if you're playing with friends, even if you maybe don't have like one of the books, like I have 3 manuals right here. Say you don't have like the Dungeon Master's Guide. I mean, it's okay. It's okay to play how you want. It's okay to omit some rules. It's really just about the fun that you're having with your friends. So,
and you'll find that depending on what dungeon master you're playing with, if you decide to go out and play with other groups, if you want to meet up with other people and play with maybe strangers that you haven't met yet, they all have different ways they play, and that's okay. Some people really closely stick to the rules and they have their handbooks out and they follow the rules perfectly, and some people play very fast and loose with rules. So it really just depends on who you're playing with. And like Whitney said, there's no right way per se to play it. It's however your group wants to play the game.
Yes, that is exactly right. So, first things first. What you need to play D&D is actually not that much, especially with all this, you know, you have so much resources that you can use on the internet and everything. All you really need is 2 people. I know you can play D&D with 2 people. One person to run the story, and that is the Dungeon Master or the Game Master, the DM or GM, and one person to play the story. So I could play right now with Kelsey as the Dungeon Master, and it'd just be 2 of us. But you can have as many people as you want, really. The bigger the party gets, the more fun.
The more chaotic it
yeah,
gets.
The more chaotic. So really all you need is people to play with you. You don't need dice, although they're fun to have. You can use dice rollers from your phone or the internet. You don't need the game book, although we have one at the library.
We do. We have physical copies of I believe the Monster Manual and the Player's Handbook. I don't think we have the Dungeon Master's Guide. That would be something you'd have to look up yourself. We also have a Steam kit, which when you come in the library, they are always on those metal shelves off to the right-hand side. I do not believe they're available right now, but in the future, if you're interested in checking out the Dungeons & Dragons Steam kit, we have those too. I'm working on getting us some copies on Overdrive so that could be something you could check out. They're not available quite yet, but hopefully look for those in the future.
So really, basically all that is to say is you don't need a whole lot of stuff in order to have fun with Dungeons and Dragons. But now I'm going to show you all the things that you could have, potentially. All things that I've accrued over the years. One of those is being the DM screen. So you can see this side, it has the cool dragon. And basically what this does is this hides my book and all the information in here that the players are going to discover as they play the game. So inside this, I'll turn it around. You can see, so inside the Dungeon Master screen, it's just a whole bunch of information that makes it easier for the DM to kind of come up with some quick things on the spot, like names or remembering a certain rule, stuff like that. And also it looks really cool because I mean dragons. So another thing which you can see up front and I've laid out, those are dice. So a lot of those that are on the board right now are D10s, and those are actually for another tabletop playing game, World of Darkness, that I already mentioned. But the D20s, which are these two really cool blue ones up at the top, those are going to be the dice that you're going to use most often in D&D. Another thing, the game board itself.
Yeah, get those right.
Yeah, so
those are the D20s.
What are those called?
D20. So those are 1D20, and dice have names based on the number of sides that they have. So there's D20, D4, D12, D8, whole bunch of Ds. And anyway, the board itself, this one is dry erase, so you can draw on it and you can draw different maps, different things that you want as your players go through the dungeon. And another thing on this board, which is actually something that I don't have, but the library has, is these figures. So right here, this little guy is an example of a figurine of a player. And there are a few different websites that you can look at if you want to make your own. Eventually, when the library reopens our 3D printing, you can make it here.
That's what all of these other little figures, these were all 3D printed here at the library on our 3D printer. Mm-hmm. And that's something, if you're interested in, you could contact the Adult Services Desk, and they do all of our 3D printing. So you will want to look at that sometime in the future, maybe, if you're interested in making some figurines of your own. Mm-hmm. But those were all three. Was this one 3D printed?
I think so.
Yeah.
It was in here. Yeah, so like I said, I don't have any figurines. When I do sessions in person, I use dice as people because I just don't have enough money to get figurines.
You can literally use, I have a friend who ran a Dungeons & Dragons game for us, and we just used random little trinkets that he had in his apartment as figurines. So like if you're at your parents' house and your mom has lots of little like Precious Moments figurines, like you can use those as your figurines. Whatever you have around the house, pretty much.
Yeah. So anything you can use is really fun, and you don't even need this either. You can just use your imagination. A lot of D&D is imagination, pretty much. And the more stuff you have to be able to show the adventure that you're describing as the DM, it's pretty cool. It gets cooler the more things you have. If you see these elaborate like dungeons that some people can craft, is amazing. But you don't need any of that really.
No.
Like I said, you just need two people.
You just need to be very creative. I know that sometimes people who are very about following the rules, and there are DMs who do that a lot. It's all about what you're comfortable with, but whatever you can imagine. If you want your character to run into the middle of a dungeon full of orcs and let out a nasty fart, like, you can do that. Mm-hmm. That can be, you can roll a dice to see how good of a fart you let out. And that would be your action for that turn. Yeah. And then there would be consequences to that action. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Kelsey mentioned earlier the D&D program that we did last summer. In my group, we had a 2-foot tall dwarf, I think she was. She's a 2-foot tall dwarf. That was really fun. I think her name was Glitter. And I made all the players roll to see if they stepped on her every time they walked around. And they loved it. It was really fun. But you know, an amazing tool to become a better DM is reading.
Yeah.
To be honest, the more you read, I mean, you know, working at a library, read. That's what I want you to do. But also, to be a better DM, read more. It helps get those ideas flowing.
Yeah, it's going to give you a lot more ideas. If you read a lot of fantasy, if you read a lot of sci-fi, that's going to help you out. It's going to, especially because this is very high fantasy. So,
Yep. So I've shared a whole lot of stuff, which, by the way, speaking of, this is all stuff that you can use in person. But right now, especially, you can check out some online resources. And hopefully I'll have the text across the screen so you can see it. But one of those resources is D&D Beyond, and that's going to have the player handbook, the dungeon master's guide, the monster manual. Those are all going to be on there. You can buy adventures. And then another resource is called Roll20, and that's where you can make maps. You can all log on virtually and play with each other, even though you're not right next to each other.
Yeah,
which is great. So what's coming up, Kelsey?
Well, we are actually going to be Whitney is going to be doing something very exciting for us this summer. And we are going to have a whole Dungeons and Dragons character creation workshop. So it's going to focus very heavily on creating your characters. And that can be kind of intimidating. If you look at some of the sheets that the Dungeons and Dragons, I guess, company, you could say, that they provide for you for the character creation, it's hard to know what to do. You have a lot of skills you have to pick out. You have to apply like numerical order to them and decide, do I want to be more dexterous? Do I want to be more charming? That sort of thing. So you really have to think about who you want this character to be. And I think Whitney will probably have us going into a lot of like creating a backstory for your character and giving them motivation and what is driving them and that sort of thing. So
the fun stuff.
Yeah, so it'll be really cool, and I'm assuming you'll probably be going over like the different races and the different character classes. And by character classes, we mean like, are you a wizard? Are you a druid? Are you a warrior? That sort of thing. So we'll be going over all of that, and that is going to be happening this summer. So keep an eye on the library's Facebook page and on our website for our summer information, and that'll be specifically for teens. So look for the Teen Summer Programming, and we'll have more information about the Dungeons and Dragons Summer Program. Is there anything else we need to go over?
I don't think so.
I mean, we talked about all the books, where you can get those. When things start to kind of return to, not necessarily normalcy, but when things get a little safer outside and more of our stores start to reopen, I like to go to Madness Games and Comics in Plano. I think that is a really excellent source for all of your, not only like tabletop gaming, but for comic books, for board games, for if you need lots of really cool dice. They have tons, like huge bins of die there. They have figurines. They have an entire back section where on Wednesday evenings, Dungeon Masters set up huge tabletops for their groups, and they have their D&D sessions. So Madness Games and Comics in Plano is a really good resource for that. And if you do a quick Google search for tabletop games or game stores in the area, they can get you a lot of places. So, and they will have all of these handbooks as well, if you were interested in purchasing them and you wanted to go look at them in person instead of doing it online. So. But don't do that until they open and it's safe.
Check out D&D Beyond instead.
Yes.
But all right. I hope this helped, and this sounds cool. And maybe if you didn't know what D&D was or Dungeons and Dragons was before this, you might be interested.
So yeah, feel free to reach out in the comments if you have any questions about Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah.
If you want to talk about I know a lot of you have actually, before we closed, approached us about if we were going to do another D&D program over the summer. So I hope you're excited. We're going to do all that character creation, and hopefully soon we'll have 3D printing options. You can get some figurines printed. Again, talk to the adult services desk about that, and we will see you guys next time.
Yeah.
So bye.
Bye.